What's up, everybody? Good morning. Happy Super Bowl week to all those who observe. You are watching The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. I am Emerson Lotzia, riding solo with you on the desk. We are taking trips around the NBA, the NHL, and PGA Tour, but just 6 more sleeps until the big game in LA. I do not know what's happening on my television. We will start with a fun-filled overreaction segment. DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich, Pierce Dietrich, and Matt Meiselman. It is good to see you guys. Pierce, you were looking fresh today, dude. I like your outfit. Are you rocking a bomber?
What's a bomber?
Like a bomber jacket. No, that's an actual just nice coat.
On top of it.
Wow. Well, thank you for looking so sharp this morning.
While the I other appreciate that. Thank you.
While the other two
he set you up perfectly, Pierce, and you whiffed, pal. I mean, like,
what's new?
I'm trying here, dude. I'm trying. All right, guys, we're talking about Cooper Kupp again. He's been held to under 90 yards twice this season. Both times were against the Cardinals. But hey, the Rams are not playing the Cardinals. They are playing the Bengals on Sunday. And if they can't slow down Kupp, they will lose. Is that an overreaction, Jeff?
I mean, like, yes and no. Obviously, like, if Cooper Kupp, goes for 300 yards or something, it's probably not going to be a good day for the Cincinnati Bengals. But we've seen Cooper Kupp, like, get there for fantasy purposes and have good days in games that the Rams just have lost. I mean, going back to the San Francisco games, I mean, during the regular season, I mean, Cooper Kupp, went for over 100 yards against San Francisco. And I mean, they still lost the game. But it's just in terms of how the yards come, I think is the big thing. If the Bengals can limit Cooper Kupp from getting those back-breaking, like, 50-yard touchdown passes, I think that's the most important thing. Cooper Kupp is going to get catches in this game. He's probably going to even get some chunk plays. It's just, can they contain Cooper Kupp from, like, changing the pace of the game, changing the momentum of the game from those big plays? Because we saw against Tampa Bay, they didn't do that late in the game. We saw last week, too, against San Francisco, they weren't so good. So that's really the big thing, I think, with Cooper Kupp, is just limiting the big plays. So I guess the answer is yes and no. Cooper Kupp can still have a big game and the Rams can lose. But sure, I mean, he's such an important player. The Bengals can keep him out of the end zone. I think that's the biggest thing.
Pierce, I know what happens 3 seasons ago doesn't necessarily impact this game, but his best game of his career did come against the Bengals in Week 8 of 2019.
Yeah, I think it is an overreaction that he can have a big game and they can definitely still lose this game. I mean, you look against the 49ers, he had 11 catches, 142 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's pretty amazing. They still almost lost to a 49ers team with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, with Eli Mitchell running for less than 50 yards. So he can go off and it may not be a big deal. I think we are just enamored with the box scores that he's putting up and just assuming, oh, well, they're winning games and he's got these big numbers. It must be because of him. And as Jeff mentioned, against the Buccaneers, he had, 180 receiving yards? Well, 120 of that came on 2 plays. You take those out and, you don't see the result. And even with those numbers, they still barely won that game as well with a massive number. I definitely believe that Kupp can go off again, 10 catches, 150 yards, and they still lose this game.
Okay, Matt, overreaction here that if they can't slow down Kupp, they'll lose.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as these guys. I mean, they're not going to slow down Kupp. His over-under receptions is 8.5, yards is 104.5. Kupp is almost certainly not going to have a bad game unless he gets injured. So I guess, yeah, you if that were true, then the Bengals would have no chance to win. Like, they aren't entirely reliant on stopping Cooper Kupp. What they are relying on is forcing some turnovers, because I do think the Rams are the better team. So the Bengals are probably going to need to get a little bit lucky here to win this game, or just keep him out of the end zone if they can be really strong down in the red zone. And Kupp gets some big plays, maybe even goes for 150, 200 yards, and the Rams are settling for field goals. That's the way to do it. So I agree with these guys completely. Just keep him from having the back-breaking huge plays that kind of end the game for you. Kupp could have 150, and if he doesn't score, I actually think that's a win for the Bengals. So they don't need to slow him down. They just need to stop touchdowns.
All right, Pierce, let's go to the other side here. Is it an overreaction to say Cincinnati needs Burrow to have a monster game for him to hoist the Lombardi Trophy?
Yeah, it's another overreaction, and rightfully so. We like talking about fantasy sports. We love looking at the box scores, the yards passing, and the touchdowns. But in reality, if he can limit turnovers, they've got a really good chance of winning. If he can limit the sacks, or his offensive line can limit the sacks, if they can stay out of 3rd and long, if they can get yards early in the series, if they can get third down conversions, a lot of the statistics that we don't really look at in terms of fantasy, but are more important when we look at money lines and spreads. So I don't think that his traditional box score, yards and passing touchdowns, is really what we should be concerned with. It's interception, sacks, third and long, converting, getting yards on the first 2 downs with Joe Mixon. That's what's really going to matter.
Okay, what's really going to matter here, Matt? Can he be sacked 9 times and not throw a touchdown and still win, like versus the Titans?
Yeah, the Rams are a lot better of a team than the Titans. Sorry, Jeff. But I think the Rams are a lot better of a team than the Titans. They're going to need more, but I don't think Burrow needs to have the monster box score game. And honestly, like if we see that Burrow had 350 yards, that might mean that something went wrong where there were some early turnovers and Burrow had to just pass a lot. I think what the Bengals are going to need to win is for Burrow to be efficient, to limit mistakes, to play well across the board, not to put up a huge box score line. Because again, like if they are trailing in this game, Burrow will have monster stats, and it's probably not a good thing for the team. So the Bengals need a strong performance somewhere, whether it's just from the team limiting mistakes, whether the defense plays really well, whether the running game plays really well. And that's really the way I see them having the best shot to win, is if Joe Mixon plays great and Burrow doesn't need to do as much. Because if Burrow keeps dropping back over and over again, we've seen what this Rams defense can do. That probably will be an issue for them.
All right, Jeff, Matt says the Bengals need a strong performance somewhere. Does it have to come from Burrow?
First of all, I just want to remind Matt that the Titans beat the Rams this year on the road. But no, I mean, look, this one is definitely an overreaction to me. It's a cliche in sports to say, oh, this team is winning in so many different ways. But like you look at the Bengals, that's actually exactly what they're doing. They beat the Chiefs last week. Joe Burrow had 250 yards. Like he had 2 touchdowns. He's fine, but he didn't do that much. Whereas before, in the first meeting that they faced the Chiefs, he really did do everything. He passed for over 400 yards. So there's numerous ways the Bengals can beat you, and they're just a team that executes well right now. And I think that's why people have trouble getting behind them. They're not super flashy in one area, but like they just do everything well. Like we saw their secondary come through with just a great turnover in the last game. So no, there are numerous ways the Bengals can win this game. And even just going back to that Cooper Kupp question, like I think the more important thing is here, if the Bengals defense can just chip in, force Matthew Stafford into a few bad turnovers, which he's been very prone to do this year, I think that's a bigger thing than shutting down Cooper Kupp. So no, the Bengals really do not need Joe Burrow to do everything. If he contributes and he has like a clean game, great. They'll probably win, but they don't need him to because this team is very, very complete right now.
All right, well, Aaron Donald has the 4th best odds to win Super Bowl MVP. Is the sportsbook overreacting to Donald's dominance, or do you think it's the right spot having him ahead of Chase, Beckham, Mixon, and even Ramsey, Matt?
Yeah, I think it's an overreaction. It's tough, though, because these are going to be people voting on the award, and Aaron Donald is a big name, so that does give him an extra boost. But in terms of who's going to be the most deserving for the MVP in the Super Bowl, I mean, it seems like a long shot for any defensive player to win, even for someone as good as Donald. I do think it's right that he has the lowest odds of all the defensive players, but 16-1 for him, I think it's an overreaction. So I'd rather have Jamar Chase. I'd rather have Beckham. I'd rather have Mixon. I might even rather have Cam Akers or Sony Michel. And there is a chance that Cam Akers may play less or not play this week. Then you get Michel as even more of a long shot. I think Donald should be back in that tier where he's between 50 and 100-1. And at that point, I'd be interested, but this number is too low for me.
Okay, what do you think here, Jeff?
I mean, I think this number is too low for any defensive player in an MVP race for the Super Bowl. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. Like Matt's right. Obviously, Aaron Donald should be the favorite among all the defensive players. But, I mean, this is the Super Bowl. Like people, you know, we're going to need something. We're going to need some fluky plays, basically. We're going to need not only Aaron Donald just forcing a fumble. That's not enough. Like people are going to need Aaron Donald to scoop that fumble up and also run like 20 yards into the end zone. Because if they don't see that, he's not winning. He can have the greatest statistical game ever on paper, but if they don't see those big plays happen, then it's just probably not going to happen because the voters, you know, the recency bias, they're humans and they like the flashy plays. Let's not forget a guy named Desmond Howard won for the Green Bay Packers just based on some like fancy, you know, special teams plays once a yonder ago. So no, Aaron Donald to me, like is just overvalued here in the odds. And again, you know, but Matt mentioned Jamar Chase, but like T. Higgins at plus 4,500. Like these guys are all going to be touching the ball way more and have chance at those big plays. So You can't really chase Aaron Donald here. He should be the favorite among defensive players, but hey, he's just way too low in the odds.
Desmond Howard, a Jacksonville Jaguars legend, and apparently, according to you, yonder is 25 years ago, Jeff. Okay, Pierce, talk to me here. Overreactions, the sportsbook overreacting here to his dominance, or is he in the right spot?
He's not in the right spot. I mean, you've got too many big-name quarterbacks, too many big-name wide receivers. That's just where the voters like to go. He will have to have a lifetime performance to win the MVP. I mean, he can be the actual MVP, but not win the MVP. Let's say he has a great game, but Joe Burrow is really good too, or Matt Stafford's really good too. The voters are going to take the quarterback. They're going to take the wide receiver. The only way that I could possibly see this working out for him, obviously he would have to have once-in-a-lifetime performance. That's probably not going to happen. Or he has a really, really good game and the offenses absolutely don't show up at all. I don't see that happening. I think he might be the best player and have the best game, but the voters go with quarterbacks. They go with wide receivers.
Happy birthday to Matt Stafford, 34 years young today. Jeff, how much of an overreaction is it to say that he needs like a 350-plus yard, at least two touchdown game for the Rams to win?
So I actually don't think this one is an overreaction, but I mean, I'm taking a very narrow view because I have a very specific way of how I think this game is going to go. And I think that the Rams' path to victory, they're going to need Matthew Stafford to be nearly perfect. Everyone is all over the Rams defense and, they're going to sack Burrow into oblivion. Again, we've said this a million times, like Joe Burrow is fantastic under pressure. I think Matthew Stafford is going to have to win this game. The one thing about the Rams, they cannot run the ball right now. Like their running backs stink. They just haven't gotten any push or anything, any production from that unit. So I think Matthew Stafford is going to have to win this game. I will say that, like, if the Rams win, it's because Matthew Stafford has something like a 303 touchdown game. So no, I don't think this one is an overreaction. I think if you're looking at the Rams, you should be going over on Matthew Stafford props. I think that's their path to victory, and that has been their path to victory. They needed him against the Bucs. He had a good game against the 49ers. So no, I'll say this one isn't an overreaction at all.
Is it an overreaction, Pierce?
Yeah, I don't like the correlation. Matt touched on this earlier with Joe Burrow. If Stafford is throwing the ball a lot, if he's going for 300, 400 passing yards, multiple touchdowns, that means the rushing game is not working. It also means it's possible that their defense isn't playing that well either because they're having to compete and keep up. Again, with what I said with Burrow, same thing for Stafford. He can throw for 250 yards and 1 or 2 touchdowns. What he has to do is don't turn the ball over, don't get sacked. If he does those things, then I think the Rams are in pretty good shape and can just play good defense. But if he's piling up a bunch of stats, I don't think that necessarily correlates with the win. Okay,
Matt, I remember earlier you said that Burrow didn't necessarily need to light up the box score, right? What about Stafford, though? Does he need to do that?
Yeah, I don't really think so. It's kind of the thing Pierce just mentioned. I'm going to go back to this. I mean, Matthew Stafford's over-under for yards is 280 or so, and the Rams are still 2-1 favorites. So I think it's going to come down to, does Stafford make mistakes? And the more mistakes he makes, the more he's going to need to throw for, the more big plays he's going to need to have for the Rams to win. So, yeah, I'm not really sure it's even been his fault that the Rams have had turnovers throughout the playoffs. Like the game against Tampa Bay, we had 2 Cam Akers fumbles and a snap that went over Stafford's head. 3 turnovers that he basically had nothing to do with. So if the team's going to do that to him, then yes, he will need a very, very large game to be able to win. But I would expect the Rams play a better game than this. I know we can talk about Sean McVay a lot, and we can say the Rams, won't be as prepared as some other teams might have been, but I think the Rams probably are in the driver's seat for this game and can play just pretty well across the board, and that's enough to win. But again, if Stafford makes a turnover or 2, then yes, he will need a really, really big box score game to make up for that.
Guys, we said it a lot all last week, and I'm getting the vibe here throughout this segment. We could see this being a pass-heavy affair. So is it an overreaction here to say fading any and all rushing bets, Pierce?
That's an overreaction. They're going to try to run the ball. Cincinnati is committed to the run. Cincinnati was down 21 points against Kansas City, and in the end, Mixon still went over his rush attempts prop. He's a talented running back. Their offensive line is not good pass blocking, but when it comes to rush blocking, they're middle of the road. And I think we might be overrating the Rams' rush defense a little bit too much. They played some pretty soft matchups recently. I know Eli Mitchell is a good running back, but that was a very one-dimensional offense that they faced that week. I mean, if you go back to the regular season when Jimmy Garoppolo was healthy, Mitchell was running all over the Rams. I go to week 16, Baltimore was running all over the Rams. I think that Cincinnati has a real shot of moving the ball, especially if everyone is expecting pass and teams are game planning and scheming for the pass. It's going to open up opportunities on the ground.
All right, what are you doing here, Matty?
I think it's half an overreaction because on the Bengals side, yes, I do think Joe Mixon could have a really big game here. So to fade him and expect that Burrow is going to be the main part of the Bengals offense, I feel like that's an overreaction. But on the Rams side, we have a lot going on with the running backs. Cam Akers didn't practice at all this past week. I would assume that he gets back out and practices this coming week and plays, but it could mean that he's on the field less. It could mean Sony Michel gets a larger workload. Darrell Henderson could wind up active for this game, and then we have a 3 running back rotation. So betting any overs on any Rams running backs right now, especially because Michel's not listed. So basically, if you're betting over on Akers, I think that is a little bit concerning. So fading that for now, yes, I agree with that. But going back to Mixon, like, I think it'd be an overreaction to fade all of his bets because I do think the upside is there for him.
Yeah, right. Like, I remember last week, Bukes, and I think a few of you guys were all in and all together on under Akers, 63.5 rushing yards. Jeff, what do you want to do here? Is it an overreaction to fade all of these and steer clear of all these rushing props?
Yeah, I mean, Matt pretty much took the words out of my mouth. You fade the Rams side of it, and I think you could probably find some really good bets on Joe Mixon this week because I think that people are expecting the Bengals to be throwing it a lot. But just as an example, longest rush, Joe Mixon, over 13.5 yards. Like, that's not very big for Joe Mixon. I mean, yeah, he doesn't have the greatest yards per carry average, but he's explosive, and we saw against the Chiefs, like Pierce mentioned. I mean, they are committed to running even when they're behind, so there will be the opportunities. The biggest thing is Joe Mixon is an every down back. He's going to be playing a ton in the Super Bowl. We don't really know the rotation on the Rams. The Rams running backs also kind of all aren't playing very well right now. So the Mixon props are what you should be looking at to potentially go over. But no, I would fade the Rams rushing attack here.
All right, so many props, so many specials on the DK Sportsbook for this one between player parlays, first touchdown score. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. We'll see a bet with plus 2,000 odds hit. Is that an overreaction, Matt?
No, there definitely will be one. The problem is I have no idea which it's going to be. Something crazy is going to happen in this game. I mean, we have bets listed for player X to score a touchdown and the team to win. Most of those pay more than 20-1 because most of the players individually have odds, 5 or 10-1 or more. And if that guy scores, one of them, the team's going to win. So yeah, we're going to see some weird stuff. We'll see the screenshots of all the bets that were nuts and all the parlays that came together. I just personally don't know which one it's going to be. So I'm not going after any of them, but I would be shocked if we see just a game that is exactly to the script where all of the favorites score all of the touchdowns. That actually is the more unlikely outcome than something weird happening.
All right, Jeff, is this an overreaction?
Classic, Matt. Of course I know what's going to happen. I know exactly which bet is going to hit. And yes, we're probably going to get multiple bets over plus 2,000 because there's a million bets on the DraftKings Sportsbook. How about T. Higgins to score first and the Cincinnati Bengals to win? You get that in the player props section under the DraftKings Sportsbook. Player parlay section, that's plus 2,800. That's going to hit. The Bengals are going to win. T. Higgins will score first and get them off to a good start. Sure. I don't know. That's my choice anyway.
Okay. Pierce, you can get plus 10,000 odds for no touchdown to be scored in this game.
Yeah, I probably won't go that far, but here's another crazy one. Bengals 2 defensive touchdowns is 6,500. A little safer bet is Beckham MVP, Akers MVP, Higgins MVP, Mixon MVP, all better than 2,000, all possible scenarios. And then another one of the special bets is Cooper Kupp scores the first touchdown, and then Jamar Chase scores the second touchdown of the game at 3,500. We know these games are going to be scripted out to start the game, and we know that Kupp and Chase are going to be heavily favored in those early scripts. That doesn't seem very unlikely for Kupp to score, and then on the next drive for Chase to score.
All right. Either quarterback to get sacked on the first offensive play. Yes, plus 2,500. A lot of good stuff there on the DK Sportsbook. Thanks, dudes. We're going to get your game scripts as the week moves on because Super Bowl week is just getting started, and so is this show. NBA Building Blocks is coming up right after this quick break. All right, we got all the week long to be talking NFL, so let's turn our attention here to NBA building blocks. We got DraftKings contributors Nick Fryer, Matt Meiselman is back in the house. We're talking best DFS and sportsbook plays, to build around for tonight's 5-game NBA slate. Do not eat Girl Scout cookies for breakfast, or do, like whatever, live your life. Best guard to build your DFS lineups around, Mr. Fryer, who you got?
So I am going to start today with Klay Thompson at 6.3K going up against the Oklahoma City Thunder. He came through for us last time in a similar spot where he's going up against a bad team. And for guys who are coming off of big injuries, or guys who are just struggling, this is the kind of situation where you want to target them. He's got 30-plus DK fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. And the biggest thing for him tonight, of course, is Klay Thompson, 3-point shooter, right? He's averaging about 8 a game. Opponents may only be shooting 34.3% from deep versus Oklahoma City, but the Thunder give up the 4th most 3-point attempts and the 6th most made 3-pointers per game.
All right, isn't that kind of like cheating there with that dude on your shoulder? Because can't he see the future? Can he read the future?
I don't know if he necessarily has that power, but
okay. I thought that's what Yoda did. I don't know. I haven't seen like the new Star Wars, the new Baby Yoda thing. That's not actual like Yoda, right? There's like
that's
a whole.
Not Yoda,
there's a whole like planet of them. Okay.
A whole different thing.
All right, sounds good. Meiselman, the only thing that you could do right now is maybe you could break out like Biff Tanner's like Gray's Sports Almanac book.
Yeah, I don't have any props or tools to help me predict the future. I'm just gonna have to go with my gut on this one. I think there's a chance that the Miami Heat rest some key players today. Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero are listed questionable. So Kyle Lowry, who's not on the injury report, is $6,600 for a really strong matchup against the Washington Wizards. We don't know if Butler or Hero are playing yet. That's where the prognostication comes in. I think just given how well the Heat have played, but they've had a tough schedule, like in terms of playing back-to-backs and all of that, they just won an important division game against the Charlotte Hornets to take over the lead. In the Eastern Conference, they're now the 1 seed. It seems like a game that would make sense for them to, just take it easy on some of their players who have been banged up. And if Butler sits and Hero sits, then you get Kyle Lowry $6,600, where he deserves to be way more expensive than that. His role would go up a lot. You also get less chance of a blowout if that happens too, if Butler's not playing. So I don't know yet if this is going to work out this way, but I'm keeping an eye on Kyle Lowry for sure.
Maddie, 5 games on the slate. So which forward is a must start here? I know you just mentioned like Butler is like questionable. You got a couple guys in the 9K range. So Siakam's in there. I mean, Levine's questionable. DeRozan.
Yeah, this is a team I like for a lot of reasons tonight, but the Charlotte Hornets and Gordon Hayward specifically. So the real answer is I don't think anyone's a must play yet, but if there's anyone who is in consideration for that, Hayward is just way underpriced at $5,000. He was a guy who was priced in the mid to high 6,000s. And then he was hurt for a few games. He's come back, and I think because his minutes were a little bit limited in the early going, his price came down. Hayward's playing more now. I think we should expect his role to go back up. The Hornets just had a really tough home loss to the Cavs, and I think this is a game that'll be pretty important for them. They're going to want their regulars playing as much as they can handle. So this is just a pricing mistake, I think, because we get this all the time where a player is underpriced because he was on a minutes limit. And then once that minutes limit is lifted, now we have value. And I think that's the deal for Hayward tonight. So this is a pretty good guy to build a lineup around. Even though there isn't really a must play yet, he's pretty close to one.
All right, Fryer, who's a good forward then to build a lineup around tonight?
Well, I'm being told right now that Mikal Bridges is going to be a must play tonight at 6.1K going up against the Chicago Bulls. I know he had a dud last time out, but we saw the same thing with Chris Paul, Devin Booker. I know Ayton had a big game in that one, but that was up against the Wizards on Saturday, and that was a blowout. So he just didn't have the normal workload that he's having. He only played like 26 minutes. He'd been playing 40 in the previous 3 games. And in those games, he provided 40-plus DK fantasy points each time out. He should get a normal workload going up against the Bulls tonight, given as much as the Bulls, I know Matt said it quite a few times on the show, how the Bulls are not the same team without Caruso and Lonzo Ball, still a much better team than the Wizards. So Bridges should have no trouble providing 6-7 times value tonight, especially considering the Bulls aren't particularly good against opposing forwards from a fantasy standpoint this season.
All right, let's talk about a center who is a big, beefy dude at the 5 you need in your lineup. Nick.
Well, I'm not going to go with necessarily a beefy guy. And, of course, this guy has forward eligibility. Pascal Siakam at 9.2K going up against the Hornets. I do like Bam Adebayo if Jimmy doesn't play tonight. But I think that's going to be a much chalkier play if Butler doesn't go. But for Siakam, he's been rolling through Toronto's 5-game winning streak. And the Hornets are trending in the opposite direction. And they're among the 10 worst teams in the NBA in terms of defensive rating. They've allowed the 4th most points per game to the center position this season, the 7th most rebounds per game to the position. And then when you look at Charlotte too, we talk about how bad they are defensively, but we also always cite how they're one of the best teams in terms of pace, which makes them such an appealing option. So Siakam, as much as Van Vliet's going, they've both been doing really well alongside each other of late. So he's my guy tonight.
All right, Matt, where are you going at center?
So, yeah, I'll go right back to the Heat and just at least mention Bam Adebayo. I'll give another player, too. But if Butler doesn't play, then we definitely have to look at Bam. But one other guy for the Warriors, Kavon Looney, this could be a game where they're shorthanded again. Otto Porter Jr. has missed some games, and so has Andre Iguodala. We already don't have Nemanja Bjelica playing for this team. So Looney, with Draymond Green out, has been a more important player for Golden State. But with all those other guys potentially out, this could be a better spot than normal. And recently, the Warriors have had a couple games where they've had to go smaller because the team they've been playing against hasn't really wanted to use a big either. They just played against Sacramento where that was the case. And then the game before that against San Antonio, Jakob Poeltl got injured in the second quarter. And from that point forward, the Spurs were playing Keldon Johnson at center or Doug McDermott. Like, they weren't really playing a center. So Looney wasn't on the court for the end of that game either. I don't think the Thunder are going to do that. We probably see Diakite or Favors. One of those two guys on the court for most of the game. So Looney should play more minutes, and at 5,100, I think it's a good matchup. I mean, it's OKC, so he should do well there.
Matt, can you make an argument for building around a value play tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to go with another center because we can't mention every single center for the center part, but Montrezl Harrell's only 4,700, and Thomas Bryant, I mean, I'm not really sure why the Wizards are trying to get him so much playing time. Like, I just don't think he's particularly good. But he's young. He has potential. He was hurt for a while. We could see Bryant become a better NBA player at some point. But for now, Harrell's the guy who's the better center on the team. And Daniel Gafford's in health and safety protocols. So these are really the only two guys I think that the Wizards are going to play at center tonight. Under other circumstances, you could see Rui Hachimura or Kyle Kuzma play center. But Miami's too big for that. To go against Adebayo or Yurtseven or Dedmon, I don't think they're going to want to play Kuzma at the 5. I think we see both centers split the full 48 minutes. And because Harrell is the much better player than Bryant, I think there's a good chance that Harrell plays more of the minutes and has more of the production. So, 4,700 I think is way too cheap for the situation for Montrezl Harrell. Okay,
Fryer, how do you feel about building around a value play?
Yeah, actually, Matt and I are on the same page on this one. Montrezl Harrell is my favorite value play of the night going up against the Heat. And, we talk about Gafford. I don't think that there's going to be like this huge, massive impact in terms of minutes distribution because he was I think playing at most 15 minutes of late. I think it was 7 last time out. So he's not getting a ton of, we're not getting a ton of minutes handed to Harrell or Bryant, but he should be able to provide at least 5 times value tonight. He's done that at this price point in 3 of his last 5 games where he's played around 27 to 19 minutes, anywhere in that range. And with Gafford out, he should be more towards that higher end of the spectrum. And as Matt said, you look at this lineup, the Heat lineup, they are good against opposing bigs. But with Bradley Beal out too, I know that's kind of translated more to Kyle Kuzma and Spencer Dinwiddie in terms of shot opportunities, but still there's more offense to be had. So with Gafford out too, Harrell should have the volume. Also, I like Darius Bazley tonight, especially if Dort is out at 5.4K. And then on even the lower end of the spectrum, Duncan Robinson at 3.6K, if no Hero or Butler in this contest.
Hey, Nick, over on the DraftKings Sportsbook side, which player prop would you build your bet slip around?
Yeah, there's a lot in terms of player props tonight that I like. I like Klay Thompson going over 2.5 3-pointers made against the Thunder. I like Mikal Bridges over 17.5 points plus rebounds against the Bulls. 2 guys, of course, I talked about from a DFS side. But my favorite one is Pascal Siakam going over 21.5 points. I was looking at points plus rebounds, but they have his rebound total set pretty high, which he could very well hit, but I'd rather just stick with the points because I feel like he'll comfortably get over this. I don't know if he's going to go seismically over and drop 30 points, but he's gone over this total in 3 of his last 4 games. And one of those games was an overtime loss versus Chicago. So there was a little help there, but still, regardless, he's in good form. Charlotte, not so much. We talked about that already. Second in pace, one of the worst defensive teams in terms of defensive rating. They've given up the 4th most points to his position this season. So Siakam at least getting 22 points tonight is my favorite prop.
Okay, Matt, what about you? Your favorite prop?
So this is going to be a little on the fly because when we started this segment a few minutes ago, there were no Miami Heat props up yet, or at least I didn't see them. Now they're up. So Bam Adebayo for points, rebounds, assists is at 35.5. I think you do want under there if Butler and Hero, if the Heat have all their guys playing. And then if they're out, the over bet I like is Kyle Lowry. So we probably want to wait for news there. But Kyle Lowry, for his full stats for points, rebounds, and assists, only 25.5. I mean, if Butler and Hero don't play, I think that number gets well into the 30s. So I'm keeping an eye on Lowry. I'm keeping an eye on Bam. But it does kind of seem like Bam is already priced up for that situation, and Lowry is not.
Matt, which team is your best bet to cover the spread? What do you think?
The Hornets are +2 at home against the Raptors. I think there's some bias baked into this line where the Hornets have been struggling and the Raptors have been winning, but the Raptors have also needed multiple overtimes to do this, and they've been traveling a lot. I mean, this is a game where they have to go from Toronto down to Charlotte. Home court advantage, I think, will be a big deal here. And the line opened with the Hornets -1. I think the public has bet it to the Raptors side. To me, it's an overreaction, so I like the Hornets getting 2 points.
All right, Nick, which one's covering the spread tonight? Which team?
I like Miami going up against Washington. The spread, I think, opened up at 4.5. That's where I saw it yesterday, but now it's up to 6.5. I still don't think that they need Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero to cover this one tonight. The Wizards, in general, are one of the worst teams against the spread this season. Was it 20, 31, and 1? And they don't have Bradley Beal still. So I think Bam Adebayo and Kyle Lowry can get this done. If they have Hero, if they have Butler, just one of those guys, sure, that helps. But I think those two have enough firepower given where the Wizards are at. I know the Wizards have been good as home underdogs this season. Well, I say good, but better than they are in general. They're 6-5 against the spread as home underdogs, but they're not good. They're under 500 on 1 day's rest against the spread, and the same goes when it's they have the same amount of rest as their opponent, whereas the Heat are on the other end of the spectrum in both of those categories. So all things are pointing towards the Heat in this one.
All right, slate-approved pick time here, Fryer. Give me your favorite bet on the board tonight before you take off.
Yeah, I like a lot of these props tonight, but in the end, I talked about Pascal Siakam going over 21.5 points. I still stand by that. I think that's, given where he's trending and how the Hornets are going in the opposite direction, I love this play for him tonight. So, yeah, Pascal Siakam, 22 points at least tonight.
All right, Maddie, favorite bet?
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on the game total in Phoenix, Chicago. Levine and Derozan are probably the 2 main players that people will worry about for affecting an over-under. Levine's been hurt. DeRozan's played a ton of games in a row with tons of minutes. He could get the night off. Kobe White, too, though, is banged up. And Kobe White doesn't play a lot of defense, is a pretty high-volume offensive player, and drives the pace pretty well. Like, I think games should go under the total if he's out, too. So watching that, and I potentially really like under 227.5 for that game if the Bulls are missing some guys.
Gentlemen, fantastic work as always. We will talk about dudes who can roll a good meatball in the desert with Jeff Ulrich right after this. Congrats, Tom Hoge, who won the Pebble Beach Pro-Am over the weekend, becoming the second straight first-time winner on the PGA Tour this season. Luke List did it just last week. And Luke's biggest fan joins us right now, DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich. All right, dude, that Jordan Spieth cliffhanger on Saturday made my palms ridiculously sweaty. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, what about you?
I was throwing up mom's spaghetti. I mean, like, it was an intense couple final holes. A little bit interesting to see that Jordan Spieth couldn't get it done against, as you mentioned, Thomas Hoagie. So, but Pebble Beach does produce a little bit of what you'd call surprise winners they have in the past. So the Hoagie has been playing well. So interesting. And I think the biggest thing to note is Jordan Spieth, bouncing back that quickly. I mean, we are not far from Augusta, so keep that in your minds for DFS.
Hoagies and grinders, Navy beans. All right, now the boys head to Phoenix for the biggest party in golf, Jeff. It's the Waste Management Open, TPC Scottsdale. DK Sportsbook's got a book there, an actual physical location on site, so check that out if you're going to be partying. Chase or fade, though. Brooks Koepka will win back-to-back Waste Management Open titles, sitting at plus 300 odds here.
Yeah, this is it's going to be a pretty easy fade for me. Look, Brooks Koepka came into this event last year on the back of 3 missed cuts and won. So, anything is possible with a player like Brooks, but it was just different last year. Last year, you could see the form building a bit. He was still gaining strokes off the tee. He wasn't playing that bad. Like, he missed the cut on the number at the Farmers. It's a different story this year. Like, something is not right. He's lost strokes off the tee in 3 straight starts. When the driver's not working for Brooks, it's like Superman without the super. He's just a man. Like he's not Brooks. He's just Koepka right now. I mean, that's kind of what's going on with him. It's just not looking good in any aspect of his game. It doesn't look like he has confidence. So for me, this is a pretty easy fade. I understand there's going to be people who want to get on here, and you got to buy the dip on when these players get up in the odds, and that is factual and true. But this is not a spot where I want to be getting on Brooks Koepka. I just have not seen any signs of life from him yet so far this year.
Yeah, so he's at plus 3,000. But then Xander Schauffele, he was second last year to Koepka. Like, are we chasing X-Man to have another top 5 finish or fading him this week? So he's at plus 2,000 odds.
So, I mean, you could chase him to have like a top 10 finish, I guess, but I'm not gonna chase. I'm actually gonna fade him here as well. Schauffele does everything well. He's produced. He hasn't missed a cut in since the dark ages, but. His last top 5 came at the Tour Championship. He really hasn't shown much yet this year either. Now, this is a spot where guys often do get it going. We're switching to a little bit of Bermuda grass, although it's more of like some kind of POA Bermuda, mix at this time of the year. But it's a different style of event, too. It's a more open venue. Xander obviously has played well here in the past, but his strokes gain approach in his last 2 starts hasn't been great. He didn't really play good at the Century Tournament of Champions, an event that he's basically dominated over the last 5 years. So I don't really like that either. I think you can fade him to finish top 5 here. I really do. I think people will get on him, but again, I mean, we have a deep field here. Like, we have 26 of the world's top 50 golfers in this event. You don't just necessarily have to gravitate to a guy just because he had like one good finish here a year ago. There's other options. And for me right now, there's a few better options than Xander out there. I won't be shocked if he finishes top 10 or top 15, but I'm going to fade him to finish the top 5. Again, just haven't seen quite enough for him to feel confident enough for that.
All right, let's go to this. Chase or fade. We just mentioned Jordan Spieth at the top of this segment, but back-to-back top 3 finishes. Sitting at plus 1,600 to win outright.
Yeah, I actually really don't hate this. Spieth is a guy who we have seen during his career, like he goes on little runs. I mean, even last year around this time, you could see the form building, and then he came really close, finally broke through at the Valero Texas Open. Now, I mean, last week you could argue that, it was Pebble Beach, and that's his favorite venue, and he always shows up there. But, he showed up obviously at this event last season too. And I think this event fits Spieth a little bit better than people realize. I mean, you really have to be dialed in with your strokes gained approach at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. We've seen a player like Webb Simpson get it done here, who's very similar to Jordan Spieth in terms of style. He gets hot with the putter. He gets hot with the irons. And he obviously pulled off the win here 2 years ago. I think it's a good venue for Spieth, and I think you will see him keep rolling again. I think you'll see him challenge again. Obviously, a top 3 finish is asking a lot, but I'm going to chase that he at least finishes in the top 5. I think Jordan Spieth is set up very well for success at this event. And, again, I mentioned last week, I didn't think his form was very close. I made a mistake in doubting him. He bounced back quickly, and I think you're going to see that carry over to this week. When Spieth gets confidence, he's not a guy you want to fade.
All right, Patrick Canelay was the top-ranked golfer in the field over the weekend, like another good finish at Pebble. How do we feel about him at plus 1,600 odds? You feel a little more confident?
Yeah, I mean, look, Patrick Canelay is just, you can just feel it. Like, it's just close, right? I mean, shot 62 to open at the Amex a few weeks ago, which again is like in the desert. It's a pretty good comparable to this week's event. I mean, last week obviously had himself right in the mix there at Pebble Beach, a venue where he's like kind of dominated at points in his career too. The worry with Canelay this week is, well, he hasn't really played this event. Like he never comes to this event. He's a guy who obviously, I don't know, maybe just doesn't like the atmosphere. He just hasn't put this on his schedule very often. But we have seen players come here, with little experience and play very well. So I'm going to chase that. I'm not going to chase that Canelay wins this week. I think that a plus 1,600, his odds are pretty interesting though. Again, this is a player's top 5 in the world. Like he was running off a string of like wins, at a pretty insane rate there towards the end of last year. But I think backing him for like a top 10 finish or just backing him in DFS is fine. People may just be scared of the lack of course history here, but I wouldn't be scared of that. Canelay is such a complete player. He's going to gel with this course extremely well. If he picks up the strokes gain approach, like he's going to win very soon. I'm not sure if it's going to come this week. I'm not going to call it to come this week, but I am going to chase him here for a very solid finish. Like I think he'll outperform some guys in this range, like a Schauffele and certainly like a Koepka. So I'm going to chase Patrick Canelay. I'm not going to make him like my pick to win, but definitely a player have some interest this week for DFS.
Yeah, he, Spieth, Hovland had the 4th best odds to win this thing outright. It takes a different mindset like on this course. These fans can chew you up and spit you out, especially there on 16. They'll let you know how they're feeling. Like Hideki Matsuyama, by the way, he's been an absolute beast here. Already has a win in 2022, 2-time winner here in this event. And like the 2 years prior to that, I believe they were like runner-up finishes or top 5. Like loves this course. He's very good here. So how do you like his chances this week? He's at plus 1,400, 3rd best odds on the DK Sportsbook.
Yeah, and look, I mean, like let's talk about the odds for a sec because they're pretty interesting. I mean, Matsuyama, 3rd on the DraftKings Sportsbook right now in odds. He's got shorter odds than Victor Hovland, who's 3rd in the world now, by the way, Patrick Canelay, who's 4th in the world, and Jordan Spieth, who's coming off a T3, and Xander Schauffele, who we just talked about. So, like Matsuyama getting respect here, but I mean, like a year ago, this would have seemed ridiculous, right? It doesn't seem ridiculous now. Matsuyama's got the Masters win. He's got 2 wins since then, one over in Japan, and then one at the Sony Open to begin the year, too. Matsuyama is trending well, and I mean, the biggest thing is he doesn't even have to be trending well to play well on this course because he loves it so much. It just sets up so perfectly for a ball striker like Matsuyama. He likes these perfectly manicured courses as well. Again, obviously the win in Japan, the win at the Masters, there's a little bit of similarity there too. He doesn't necessarily love the thick rough, the US Open style setups. He likes these courses where you can be a little bit aggressive. If you're very consistent, you're hitting fairways, you hit a ton of greens, you're going to give yourselves a ton of birdie opportunities. And he has absolutely eaten up this course. I mentioned the strokes gain approach factor at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. 5 of the last 6 winners here have gained 6.0 strokes on approach or more for the week of their win. Matsuyama is a guy who always gains strokes on his approach when he's playing well. So, I mean, Matsuyama at plus 1,400, he may seem short in the odds. He's really not. I think these are actually pretty fair odds for Matsuyama. Yeah, he's in front of some big names. But, man, you're going to see Hideki in contention this week. There's no way I'm fading him at his favorite venue. This is a chase all the way. I think you'll see him post in the top 5 again. Just
the top dog in terms of course history at TPC Scottsdale. You cannot debate that. Before you get out of here, Jeff, I'm looking at the DK Sportsbook. You just must have put in your bet here because Louis Oosthuizen, his odds just went from plus 4,000 to plus 3,500 this morning. How confident are you here? The South African can win it this week, dude.
I mean, look, jokes aside, this has been Louis' this has been a very good venue for Louis. He hasn't played at Waste Management very often, but the last time he did, or the first time he played here, he finished T3. It's a player who kind of a little bit like Matsuyama, he likes these manicured setups. He likes Augusta. He doesn't mind getting around. He can score with the best of them. His strokes gain approach and off the tee was trending pretty well towards the end of the year. Kind of had a cold putter to end last season, but we've seen Louis play here twice now over the last 5 years, a T3 and a T11. I think this is a very good setup for him. And I think people are going to be scared off here. Well, I don't want to bet Louis stays on plus 3,500. He hasn't played yet this year. I'll remind people, Brooks Koepka came in here last year, no form, won. Brooks Koepka came here in 2015, his first event of the season, and won. This is a bit of a change. We're going from the extreme West Coast over to kind of the desert. it's a big change for a lot of these people. I don't think it's necessarily a disadvantage for a player like Oosthuizen to come in cold. And again, we've seen him do it here before. So I'm going to chase this all day, Emerson. Like you said, my bet on Louis is in. He's my pick this week. Yada, yada, yada. Let's get this going. Off to a great start here. February is just here. We got the Waste Management Phoenix Open, and we got Louis back in the fold. So, yeah.
Nature is healing, dude. Nature is healing. All right, I'll talk to you later. You're on the slate tonight, right? I think you are. Okay, cool. So have fun.
Flash though, A-list only.
Oh, hey, easy, pal. It's Monday. All right, have a good rest of your day. We'll see you on the slate tonight at 5 o'clock. We're gonna bring this thing home with some sticky puck talk with Paul right after this quick break. All right, we got a handful of minutes left in this show. We'll talk some NHL because the All-Star break is over, and we got Paul Bruno here of RotoWire, best DFS and Sportsbook plays for the two-game NHL slates. We're talking Carolina here, and you're Toronto, and then New Jersey and Ottawa. Start with DFS, and let's talk some showdown. So who would be your captain here in the Hurricanes-Leafs game?
I go to the top of the board for Austin Matthews tonight. He's really grown into a leadership role, and I think that's been very evident by his recent play. He's playing with a ton of confidence. The shot volume is off the charts, as we know. The scoring streak is intact. It's all there, and he's primed for a big-time matchup against a team that is noted as one of the beasts of the East. So he'll be fired up. That's good enough for me.
Well, who's earning that top star for Devil Senators?
I go with Brady Tkachuk, the Ottawa captain, similar profile to Matthews, maybe Matthews light if you want to compare. He too is growing into a leadership role over there. Consistent effort and high energy are the hallmark of his game. He too is bringing it with shot volumes. He's been double digits or 9 or 8 in a couple of his recent starts too. The weakness of the Devils roster, which now includes Jack Hughes, who was now on the COVID list for them. He joins a lengthy list of guys on the Devils roster who are sidelined for tonight's matchup, and they're going to go with an AHL goaltending option because their top 2 guys are injured as well.
All right, man. You going over or under here for that Carolina-Toronto game over on the sports book?
I'm hitting the over hard on this one. I think there's way too much talent on both ends of the ice there. And I remember a shootout that happened between these two teams around this time a couple of years ago. Most of those players are still back, and they're better than they were then. So I expect a lot of goals, a lot of shots, and to take the over big time.
All right, same goal total for Devils and Sens. Where are you going on that one?
I'm going to take the underside here. I think this game's going to be a lower scoring tilt. I already slammed the Devils goaltending, but it's their offense that's going to keep this to the underside. They've been having a lot of trouble getting up to 2 goals in any of their recent starts. So I think that Ottawa's hard pressed to get 5 or 6 by themselves. I think this is more of a 3-1, 4-1 game. So I'm going to go to the underside for the payoff here.
Bring us home with this, dude. Paul, your favorite player prop on DK Sportsbook, 2-game slate.
You know what? I look at the power plays tonight, and I'm looking at power play points for Tkachuk and Matthews. Tkachuk is a plus 225 if he picks up a power play point, and I think that's a great bet. I even think Austin Matthews at plus 180 for the same prop is a very nice payoff as well. So stick with the big guns. They'll pay off tonight.
All right, dude. That's it. That's it for the segment. That's it for the show, everybody. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, and we will be back tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. Don't forget the slate tonight. Glash, Matt, and Jeff, much more about football and Super Bowl 56. See you later.